Welcome to Coffee Talk, brought to you by Hyatt Commercial.
I'm your host, Justin Mullen, where industry executives talk leadership, culture, and commercial real estate. Grab your coffee and let's talk business.
Anna, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. It's the middle of session, so I know you are very busy. So to take a little time out of your day means a lot to us. And we've known each other for a long time. We've really gotten to know each other more recently through our kids and you're a friend of my wife. And, but you've built a great business and I'd love to learn more about it today. But as we do, let me start you off with our main question here, which is if you had to describe your leadership style in one or just a couple of words, what would it be?
I'm collaborative. I would say that. I make a decision very quickly, but then I want to hear kind of what the team has to think about it. So I'd say collaborative. I love the team that I've built around me and I really trust them. Yeah,
that's a great description. And for the listeners, we don't discuss that part of this in advance. So every time somebody tells me what their description is, new to me, but it's interesting because in my notes, definitively collaborative makes a lot of sense because given the industry that you're in, you've got to literally reach across the party aisle and collaborate and bring people in with different perspectives. So with that, the second thing we'd like to do is let you introduce yourself. So, I know you as a businesswoman and a mom and a friend, but give us your bio and your background and tell us where you are today.
Well, thanks for having me. And this is going to be fun. So it's always great to kind of tell someone a little bit about your background because you and I know each other as adults, but I guess I kind of was born into politics. My grandfather was an elected official. My dad was involved in campaigns. And so we always talked about politics around the table, always, very respectfully. I think my parents kind of always debated and didn't always agree. And my brother and I were always sort of intrigued by that. I liked political science and kind of leaned into that a little bit in college. And then my mom was friends with somebody who worked for Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. And she was the lieutenant governor at the time. And that's RFK's daughter. So RFK Jr.'s sister. The oldest of 10, interesting family, obviously the Kennedys. And I got an internship with her, but I had no qualifications. Like I watered her plants in the office and made copies. And I was working alongside Yale law grads and stuff. It was just, I happened upon this internship, but I think I was always sort of friendly and upbeat and willing to do anything. And from there, she ran for governor and right as I was getting out of college, she launched her campaign for governor and lost. So it was this most dramatic, unfortunate loss. But I think sometimes you learn more from losing. Yeah. And I made really good friends because you're in the trenches with these people. And, campaigns are brutal. You're reading things about your candidate that aren't true. And you're so mad at the other side. And I was young and I didn't really have the maturity to kind of compartmentalize that it was just professional and not personal. And then from there, I sort of stayed in touch with people that I knew from the campaign and got a job working for the Maryland Senate president, who is just a legend in Maryland politics. He's the longest serving Maryland Senate president he's passed away, but he was the longest serving Senate president in the history of the United States. So just
President Mike Miller,
yes,
correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So true master of the Senate. And he knew so much about balancing personalities. He was really, really smart, but he kind of came across as a salt of the earth kind of guy. And I think I just learned so much from observing how he managed people and personalities. And when you're the leader of the Senate of Maryland, you not only need to get elected by the people that elect you in your district, but you have to get elected by Republicans and Democrats that choose you to lead the Senate. And he was great, very funny, crass, not politically correct at all, but a wonderful, true mentor, and worked for him for 6.5 years and then was approached by a private sector firm and became a lobbyist. And it's sort of the same skill set, working with clients. So that's my story.
And what's the name of your business now?
Compass Advocacy.
Yeah. And how many people do you have in the company now?
So we have 7 lobbyists and 4 support staff.
Gotcha. And so Mike Miller's grandson Tommy, and then his son Tommy I knew pretty well. I coached young Tommy in lacrosse when he was in middle school, I think it was. But, interestingly enough, you got into politics in the way that you probably succeed now through relationships, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, it's a challenging industry to, one, get into, and then two, survive in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, and maybe I'm wrong, the way you describe Mike Miller, it's kind of ruling with the velvet hammer. You got to be able to take care of people and gently deal with them. And then when the time comes, you got to be able to hammer it home. Right. Yeah. I mean, what's the delicate balance there?
Yeah. So, you mean in terms of leadership style?
Exactly. How do you, because you've got to build a team that goes out, I presume, and each kind of goes out, gets their own clients, right?
Yeah.
And so, balancing who's on what side of a
right. In terms of, it's funny, like Maryland we just had a Republican governor before Westmore, and we had to work very closely with that administration as well as the Democratic administration that is in power now and in the state house. And I think one thing that's kind of nice about Maryland politics too is that it's just not quite as divisive as DC. So for example, we do these committee dinners. We're allowed to have, Maryland law doesn't allow you to take out a senator or a delegate. You can't just buy someone a steak dinner, but you can take out an entire committee. So the entire committee is made up of Democrats and Republicans. And so we're sitting down with Democrats and Republicans and we're breaking bread. And I remember not too long ago, one of my clients that does most of their business on Capitol Hill finished the dinner and was like, what the hell was that? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said that was, 10 Democrats and 6 Republicans all hanging out and joking and having fun and talking about things that they disagree on and kind of moving on and then talking about their kids or sports or whatever. And she
being real human beings.
And it was so foreign to her.
Yeah, that's a breath of fresh air for everybody to hear that.
So it's nice that I think kind of because of that rule that you can't just take one person out, you have to sort of include everybody. And I think it's just different here because they're truly friends. I was talking to a senator yesterday and I was, are you coming to the dinner? She said, yes, I'm getting a ride with so-and-so. And it was a Republican and she's a Democrat from Montgomery County and he's a Republican from Baltimore County. And they don't agree on politics at all, but he was picking her up and they were coming to dinner. It was cute.
It's nice to hear that in the commercial real estate industry. It's, people accuse it of being cutthroat and everybody's kind of out to win the deal. And that's true, but it's at the same time, you've got to build lasting relationships.
Yeah.
You're going to sit on the opposite side of a table with somebody for decades, potentially, And so in that sense, there's a little bit of a crossover there with what you have to deal with. But let me go back to your bio and kind of how you got into this. So do you consider yourself an entrepreneur, a lobbyist, a business owner, all of those things? Like, how would you describe yourself?
I think all of those things. I love closing deals. I love getting a new client. We had a pitch yesterday with a client that went really well. And so today they want to invite the CEO to come talk to us again. And, Rob was on the pitch too, my husband, who's my business partner. And we were like high-fiving afterwards, like, new client. It's just fun to grow.
It is amazing. And it could be a small client. Certainly the bigger, the more excited you get, but just closing a deal, winning a deal is still fun. Like my role has really grown much more into like coach, leader than like player. But when I do get asked to join a pitch or sit in on something and we win it, there's no better feeling. In our world, that doesn't guarantee we even get paid. We've just won the opportunity to maybe then go earn a fee on something. So
yeah. Well, shout out to your team. Seriously, Cecil. So we had just left our old firm to start our new firm, and there were like articles in the paper about how there was a big defection and Cecil was kind of the first one that spoke it the truth. He reached out to me and said, hey, you need an office. And I was like, oh, if I need compute, I need everything. But like, I was so overwhelmed because starting a business is very overwhelming, but he sort of spoke it into out there that I needed an office and he was right. And so you guys found us a space.
I'm glad to hear that. And that's one of the things that I preach to our team all the time, in particular the newer members of the team who are like, where do I get started? I'm like, well, first of all, like read every journal and local news thing that you can professionally, and who knows what you might, business you might take up. But again, leaning into the entrepreneurial side of it, did you decide to become a business owner because it happened naturally, or can you point to something in your background or when you were young where you were like, you knew you were going to be an entrepreneur and own a business from the age of 10, 12?
I didn't. I was more into the politics part, but I do like it. There's no better feeling than being like, I'm going to bring my dog to the office and I can, because it's my business. Or we're going to close on Friday. Everybody go hang out with your family. You can make those decisions that, when something it's truly ours, we own it. And there's no better feeling.
Yeah.
So I didn't know, but I'm really excited that this is where I am.
Yeah, it's cool. There's a weird feeling of total freedom and at the same time, totally being attached to something that you can never put down.
Right.
Not for 1 minute.
Right.
And now you can find time for yourself, but you never stop worrying or thinking about that.
Right. Yeah.
But that's kind of what business owners thrive on.
Right.
And I imagine you're similar to me in the sense that I don't really view much separation of the phases of my life. It's not like, your kids and my kids know each other. So we only know each other personally through, kids, or like, this is strictly my business community over here. Like for me, it's
all one.
Yeah. There's no separation of it.
Yeah.
And at times that's maybe challenging, but I wouldn't want it any other way for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's funny because it's also just a small town. I remember like kind of looking like a scrub and being in growls, and I run into the Speaker of the House and I'm like, no, because I need to ask that person an important question about work. And here I am looking, I just rolled out of bed.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's definitely part of the mixing it all together.
Yeah.
Part of the process. But how do you, from a leadership perspective, is your team kind of individuals that just kind of share resources, or is there like a real structure and leadership style or management style, that you guys work under?
Yeah. So our clients are Fortune 50 companies and then small nonprofits, and we have everything in between. Literally Lockheed Martin, Uber, the largest energy generators in the world, and then the Girl Scouts of Central Maryland. And we, treat them all with a lot of respect and dignity, and they're here to try to get something from the Maryland government, and we're here to help them. So what we do is every client has a lead person, and then that lead person, that's a quarterback. That's the person that they're going to call if like there's an emergency or they really need a point person. And then that point person has a couple of people helping them in case they're on vacation, which we don't do right now because it's the legislative session, or in a meeting and they need someone else to call. So we found that if we put everybody on a client, the client's kind of like, who is my person? So we do assign, we call it a lead. And then most clients have one or two co-leads. Our biggest clients have all of us registered for them doing work. And our smallest clients, like I represent the libraries and they're awesome. I love them. And they're actually so well researched, as you can imagine. But like I deal with them.
Yeah.
And they can always catch me or find me. But Lockheed Martin, Uber, that's a big team because they have their fingers in a lot.
That's one of the fun things about living in Annapolis, and in particular for you working, in the side of the business that you're in, is you do get to interact with the whole spectrum of types of clients.
Yeah.
We're very similar, and structurally we're very similar too. Each of our brokers is kind of their own business.
Yeah.
But we come together, and certainly the company generates business and opportunities. And then, we identify who is the specialist or expert at this, whatever it may be. And we, hand them off as the lead,
right,
and build a team around them. So very similar in that sense. So what's interesting right now in politics? What do you have going on in session?
Well, I know I just said that everyone in Annapolis gets along, but the governor is trying to, I see both sides of this. The governor is trying to redistrict a Republican seat away from the Maryland congressional map. And what he's doing is fighting back because they've done that in states like Texas. And everything's kind of getting ready for the midterm because 2026 is a midterm election on the federal side. It's an election for everybody in Maryland. So everybody's up, the entire legislature, the governor. So you're going to get a lot of phone calls later after session's over. People are going to want your money.
All right, it's already started on the Anne Arundel County side.
Oh, really? I bet.
County council, county executive.
Yeah, they can fundraise now.
Yeah.
So that is, the Senate president doesn't want to do it. He just feels like it's only one seat. What's the point? The governor potentially has higher ambitions to maybe run for president. And so the House is on the side with the governor, and the Senate president is the backstop on happening, and there's some shade being thrown. So that's big redistricting.
A little unusual that there's kind of internal turmoil and on the Democrat side.
Right. So the governor did a state of the state this week and made it clear that he wasn't happy with the Senate. I think there's going to be, and it's still kind of early in session, but there are going to be several bills that deal with energy prices. People are not excited about their BG&E bill or whatever, however they get their energy. So energy prices will be big.
All right. So we've had some energy people on the podcast before talking about solar, talking about wind, which nobody really likes. I think people solar don't know how efficient it is, but I think there's a real opportunity there. Yeah, nuclear. I don't know that there will ever be another nuclear built in Maryland, although I think there's been some talks. But, we also, I also hear politicians talk about attracting high-tech, manufacturing and, technology and industry to the state. Well, all of that requires electric, and so we're getting destroyed by Virginia with the data center business. Although, again, I continually hear about the desire to attract data centers here. With that as the backdrop, how do you deal with the energy side of it? Like, what are they proposing right now? Anything interesting?
I mean, I think there are just a bunch of proposals out there, and the speaker wants to do something about it. So right before the legislative session started, the Speaker of the House resigned. And so there's a brand new speaker, and she came from a health background. And so energy is not her policy expertise, but she hired some people that, know what they're talking about in terms of energy. But there are a lot of competing interests. It's the BG&E and the Exelons, and then it's solar farms. And I mean, it does seem offshore wind is just a complete standstill because of the administration on the federal side. But I think that it's probably going to be one of those pieces of legislation that goes all the way to the end of session and is introduced as one thing and comes out and passes and is signed by the governor looking completely different. And they're just going to have to work through it. A lot of late night work sessions, and it'll probably be like, it'll address data centers. It'll address more solar incentives, more renewable energy incentives, and more in-state generation, natural gas. And you're right, probably no more new nuclear, but they're going to keep that nuclear plant running as long as they can, the one they have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what else? I'd cut you off a little bit. Anything else interesting going on?
So it is an election year, and election year sessions usually mean not a whole lot of controversy because no one wants to, they're not going to decide to pass something that is going to come home to roost when they're out door knocking, trying to get votes. But I think that there's a little bit of a budget deficit. They're going to have to reconcile that. But it's, like I said, it's an election year, so they're not going to raise your taxes.
Yeah. That's tough to do in an election year.
That is not popular.
You won't be getting my vote if you do that.
I mean, me neither.
All right. So tell us, what is you're in session now. What's a day in the life look right now? I mean, I know that you're super busy, but what's the average day look like?
So it's a lot of late nights. So I, try to wake up and hydrate, and it's usually meetings with clients about, with legislators about bills. And I can, let me try to think of one that I'm working on now. Okay. So we just got hired by this company that they make devices that you put on your car that would not allow you to go more than 7 miles over the speed limit. And so we're launching this program, a pilot program that says that if your license has been suspended because you're just a terrible driver and you have 12 speeding tickets and you're an unsafe driver, you could put one of these on your car and get back on the road. And it's a brand new device. No state has passed this yet, but this company that manufactures them is like, help us get some business in Maryland. And they're not the only ones that can do it. So it's not, they have competition. So, but let's try this. And so that's kind of fun.
And so what are you doing? So are you having coffees with people? Are you, walking into politicians' offices? How do you, what is the process?
We built together.
Show us how the sausage is made.
All right. So we put together this coalition. There's a officer that is helping us kind of on a personal side. He was hit by a guy that was going way fast, and his legs were amputated as a result of his recovery, how they had to treat him. He lost his legs, and he testified on the bill. And I think that's just so powerful. No one wants to hear from a lobbyist that is getting paid to say something, but he's an advocate for safer streets, and he's got a personal story. And I think that's really powerful. So we get him to testify. We had another kind of safe driving advocate testify. We had the bike community come out. And it really is sort of finding a diverse group of interests that are helping to support the cause.
And so is there like open discussions in the chambers? How does that work? Does somebody have to present a bill and they bring people in and they support it, or just bring up an idea? Let's kick this around. Like, how does that structurally work?
The client hired us. We went to a legislator that we on the House and Senate side that were willing to carry it. And we want to make sure they're well liked. If a legislator is just kind of not very friendly to anybody, they're not a good sponsor. So you find a sponsor. And that's a senator and a delegate. And then we've been doing meetings and setting up meetings with like the chairman of the committee, the subcommittee chair, just to...
So it's grassroots. You're building it from the ground up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've sat in particular, we had a lot of clients in the cannabis industry. So whenever that was 10 years ago, or maybe even more now, when it was really coming through the medical side of things, I sat in on a lot of those more larger presentations and whatnot. But all right. Well, having a husband that's in the business and understands your schedule certainly helps. But how do you guys balance the work-life thing this time of year?
It is hard. I mean, we're working really hard. My daughter yesterday was like, when are you putting us to bed? Because I've been out every night. I'm like, tomorrow, I promise. But this is how I kind of frame it to myself. It's 90 days of just suck.
Yep.
And then kind of right about the time you're about to lose your mind, it's over. Yeah. And then the rest of the year is just such a good... I don't work on Fridays, really. I mean, I do. You own a business. You're always working, but I'm chilling in the summer.
Yeah. And you get to go enjoy yourself when there's downtime. Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely a huge benefit to that. My dad was a CPA. So
same schedule.
Yeah. Very similar timing and everything. And they're probably even busier outside of tax season than maybe you are, but it was definitely a grind to get through that. But so what's the future of the business look like? Do you guys set ambitious goals? Do you just kind of go like, we're year to year, we bring in the clients we want to work with? Like, how do you look out into the future at this point?
So I'm lucky that Rob is just like such a numbers guy, because I'm not really. And he has metrics that he wants us to reach every year. And he looks at what our growth was this year versus our growth next year and what our projected growth is. And when we first started, what our growth was. And he really kind of sets goals, and they're really ambitious. So I'm like, okay, fine. But he's really numbers oriented, and he looks at what other firms do and their growth and wants to beat them and really pushes. He's competitive too, probably even more competitive than I am. And he pushes us to hit those goals.
That's great.
Every year it's, all right, guys, we need 6 more clients by the end of the year. Okay.
And do you sit down and as a team discuss what the strategy is? Like, how do you identify who you're going after? You know, what's that look like?
I mean, it's kind of like, not dissimilar from what Cecil did. I got close to a guy that works at, an executive at a data center because I was reading an article.
Yeah.
When I reached out to somebody that I knew would know him, basically. And that's how I found them. So we do, but to answer your question, we sit down once a week, and it's a continuous staff meeting. And a lot of it is about what we're doing with current clients, but then we have a whole big part that's about growth.
Yeah. And this time of year, I don't want to say I was surprised to hear that you're pitching a client in the middle of session. Is that normal? When do you typically pick up your clients?
It is a little bit, because they saw a bill become introduced and it's a problem for them. Yep. And they want to either kill the bill, which we do a lot, or which we help clients. We don't just pass bills. We actually more often than not are trying to stop bills.
Yeah.
But they're like, we need to either stop this or you need to help us get some amendments on this. This is a big problem for our business. So it's still kind of early in session. It's a 90-day session. So you only have 90 days to get a law passed. And unlike Capitol Hill, your bill dies at the end of the session and you have to start from scratch the next day. Whereas on Capitol Hill, you can kind of keep things rolling. So 90 days is a lot of time, but it really kind of, the rubber meets the road, I'd say, in the last 3 weeks. So they're hiring us, hopefully, for a bill that is being heard, and like the hearing is in 2 weeks. And then I've got to think that they're going to have work groups on it. And so there's still a lot of time.
Right. So they hire you now, you get started, and at the end of the session or somewhere towards the end of the session, you're figuring out if you've succeeded or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've gotten to build a good relationship with the Associated Builders and Contractors. Chesapeake Shores, I think, is the region, which is right here in Annapolis. And I know that they've had, kind of building on your point, a lot of times it's, defeating bills as much as trying to pass bills.
Yeah.
Anne Arundel County tried to pass a PLA that was pretty onerous to non-union contractors.
Yeah.
And they were patting themselves on the back last week because I think they kind of killed the bill that was really bad. And now they're focused on Charles County, I think, as well, which has got an even worse bill from what I've read on it. So, well, with that, how do you kind of, lead on the family side of things? We all have this professional life, but at the end of the day, we do still go home, even if it is late at night, and we've got kids to raise and families to lead. How do you handle that?
I mean, that takes almost as much organization as work.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I'm sure you were making Valentine's this morning, like getting them all set.
Yeah. Not me, but my wife for sure. But I am on part of the camps committee, like having to decide where you're going to go in the summer.
Right.
And what teams you're going to play on.
And And you're a coach too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think that just takes you have to set time aside every week to just stay organized. Yeah. I will text sometimes your wife and be like, what letter day is it at school?
Yeah.
Because it depends on what uniform they wear. So
yeah, that's, again, I think it just kind of goes back to everything blends together.
Yeah.
If you get an hour and a half of your day to sit down and focus on some family stuff, you take it. But well, with that, I appreciate you coming in. I hope we touched on all the topics you wanted to get to.
Yeah. You touch on all the topics you wanted to
get to? I love hearing about making of the sausage, so to speak, in the politics side of things. I'm glad I'm not in it.
Yeah.
But I do, in particular, in our business, the local side is so critical to us.
Yeah.
And I'm certain that we've probably had clients that have crossed over over the years.
I think most people don't really realize that. You obviously do, but I don't know if most people realize that there's 2,000 laws that are introduced every year that could impact them or their community or their,
Well, just as an example, like the sales tax on IT services.
Yeah.
Like that hit every single business in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I wasn't really paying that close of attention to it, except that either the year before or earlier in that bill, it was going to be a sales tax on every professional service, and I know that Association of Realtors and NAIOP and all these kind of
lobbyists,
real estate industries.
Lawyers,
all of us were going, no.
Yeah.
So, but it is, I think a big part of it is that the national news is just so divisive.
Right.
And that's what everybody's attention is drawn to. Meanwhile, the actual decisions that are being made, which is, I will say, the greatest thing about this country, in my opinion, is we try and narrow it down to as small a groups as possible to make decisions for the area that you're in. But well, appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You got a busy day, and maybe we'll get back and do this again sometime.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Good work.
How's that?
Fantastic.
Thanks for tuning in to Coffee Talk with Justin Mullen. Topics on leadership, culture, CRE, brought to you by Hyatt Commercial. Until next time.